Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
There's a lot of cool things to do in St. Louis, and this should be on everybody's bucket list.
That's something that really unites them in this exhibition. That's something that I love personally as well.
We thought we might have something here, and it grew and it grew and it grew.
Today on Spotlight, examining the complex relationship between two of the most celebrated landscape painters of their eras, plus a hands-on guide about mental health for students and teachers. And then SLU research helps reduce crash rates for teenage drivers with ADHD. But first, how Stages began in Kirkwood. Meet one of the founders. It's Sunday and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
If you didn't know this was the home of a Broadway producer, it wouldn't take long to figure it out.
I'm feeling like your top dog. That's the New York vibe.
I was born and raised in Queens and Brooklyn, and being from New York, I had access to Broadway, so I started going to Broadway at a very, very young age.
Long before Jack Lane became executive producer at Stages St. Louis, he was appearing on other producers' stages.
Oh, just how much I care.
I did a lot of soap work and a lot of film work. But I have to tell you, as an actor, whether it was theater or film or TV, when I was there and I was present, I was always going, you know, I would do it that way. And it was producer-director head. It always was.
But it was Jack's performance as Tony in a 1982 upstate New York summer stock production of West Side Story that would change the course of his career and his life. The director-choreographer of that production was Michael Hamilton.
And he told me of a dream he had to go back to St. Louis, where he was from, Kirkwood, Missouri, to open a theater company.
Not long after, the two friends became life partners and then business partners.
I was getting disillusioned as an actor. I really was. It's like, this is really not for me. And then he said, why don't we try to open this theater company? There's a theater. It's the Kirkwood Community Center Theater. And we thought, let's just give this a shot. And I remember saying, if we do this, we have to present a season. It can't be one show. It has to be 3 shows. We have to be making a statement of we are doing a season.
And they did, starting in the summer of 1987, opening with Dames at Sea, with Jack as one of the leads and Michael Hamilton directing, performing in a cramped auditorium built for organ recitals, not splashy Broadway musicals.
By the time we got to our 3rd show, I Do, we had tripled the audience size. So instead of 60 people, there was a little under 200 people in the audience. And there was like 8 performances per production. And we thought we might have something here. And it grew and it grew and it grew. And by the 5th season, we had like 3,000 subscribers. I mean, it just kind of exploded.
Both Jack and Michael would continue to appear on stage occasionally, but their full-time jobs were backstage, with Michael serving as artistic director and Jack as executive producer. In 2012, Jack also began producing on Broadway, commuting between St. Louis and New York. His first show was Peter and the Starcatcher, based on the novel by St. Louis author Ridley Pearson. Jack has since helped produce numerous Broadway shows, which as of the spring of 2023 include Peter Pan Goes Wrong and a new musical called And Juliet. His shows have won 3 Tonys and received 5 Tony nominations. Then, in the summer of 2022, with Stages now in residence at the new and much larger Kirkwood Performing Arts Center, Jack's 2 worlds became one. The show was The Karate Kid the Musical, the first ever pre-Broadway tryout in St. Louis theater history. Jack says he is sure it will not be the last.
People went crazy for it. And I love people who are, came in with a little chip on their shoulder, ha ha ha, Karate Kid the musical. It's gonna be another one of those 80s movies put on stage, here we go. And then they'd walk out at the end of the second act and go, oh my God, I didn't know it was gonna be that moving and that beautiful.
Focus.
The Karate Kid the musical would turn out to be the first production of Jack Lane's final season with Stages St. Louis. He retired in 2022, but will continue on for a while as a paid consultant and forever as a friend of the company.
Stages will always be in my heart, but when I leave something, I leave something. And it was time.
There's something to any day. I will know right away.
Jack Lane was still in his 20s when he gave this performance at a friend's wedding. He picked the song Something's Coming from West Side Story, since he had just learned it for that summer stock production he was about to join, the one directed and choreographed by Michael Hamilton. And although he didn't know it at the time, the lyrics could not have been more apt. And more than 40 years later, they still are.
Something's coming, I don't know what it is, but it is gonna be great.
I have a lot of dreams for myself as a producer in New York, which I hope then to bring some of it to Stages. What I've learned at Stages, I apply it every day to what I do in New York and vice versa. What I learn in New York, I apply to Stages. And I will continue to share that with Stages. So it's having both worlds is great.
I'm home!
It was about creating the very best product we possibly could. We just dove in and we just never stopped.
With every stroke of the bow, every stroke of the brush, with every stroke of genius, the arts make life in St. Louis richer, not just emotionally, but also economically. In our region, the arts create almost $600 million a year in economic activity, supporting more than 19,000 jobs, generating almost $60 million for state and local governments, with almost 12 million annual arts-related visits. That's more than all St. Louis sporting events combined. Whether in a park, on a street, or a wall, experimental or a classic, the arts deserve our support, because the arts help support us. HEC Media is proud to be our region's home for arts, education, and culture, because in St. Louis, the arts mean business.
We're in the ticketed exhibition space at the St. Louis Art Museum in the exhibit Monet Mitchell, Painting the French Landscape. This is a show that is a partnership with the Fondation Louis Vuitton and the Musée Marmottan Monet in Paris. We've brought together a wonderful collection of paintings by the great Impressionist Claude Monet and the great abstract expressionist Joe Mitchell. For me it was important to think about the dialogue between the two artists. So as you walk through the show, you'll see pairings of similar subjects treated by both artists, like trees, for example, or bodies of water. You'll see similarities in the vibrant gestural brushwork that both artists are using. But I think it's also important to realize that there are differences. So Mitchell is using drips of paint spatter at times in a way that's different to Monet. Claude Monet is a leading French Impressionist painter. Joe Mitchell, a leading American abstract expressionist painter. Both saw themselves as landscape painters. That's important. They were both very connected to nature. They both painted the French landscape in particular, and that's something that we focus on in this exhibition. Monet lived in the final decades of his life at a place called Giverny, to the northwest of Paris, where he developed these very beautiful gardens which inspired him. And Mitchell, she had this kind of transnational existence, growing up in America, but living much of her later life in France. She lived at a nearby place called Véteuil from 1968 until her death in 1992. She lived in a house which actually looked down on a cottage where Monet had lived, so she was painting that same landscape. It was kind of surrounded by the ghost of Monet, if you like. And critics from the late 60s repeatedly compared her work to that of Monet. And initially she embraced that association, but increasingly as critics made that comparison so frequently between her work and that of Monet, around 1980 she starts to distance herself from Monet. She makes comments, for example, Monet's a poor colorist. I think she essentially got fed up with that repeated critical comparison. She wanted to assert her difference, and that's essentially what you see in her late interviews in the way she discusses Monet. What would Monet have thought of Mitchell's work? I mean, that's a difficult question to answer. I think Monet would have found Mitchell's work more abstract than his, and maybe that would have shocked him a bit. I don't know. You can argue that Mitchell is taking the abstraction a stage further than Monet ever did. I think he would have admired and loved Mitchell's love for nature. That's something that they both shared, and that's something that really unites them in this exhibition. It's something that I love personally as well. Please come to see this exhibition. It runs until June the 25th. We have a range of events that are associated with the exhibition, in which you can see on our website, www.slam.org.
Big Muddy Adventures, later on Spotlight. Parents and teachers often have little to no training in mental health, yet are having to face daunting issues with their kids and students every day. A new book, Educators as First Responders, provides essential insights into how to support today's youth. Classroom Matters podcast host Christy Houle sat down with author and educator Deborah Offner to discuss the increasingly relevant topic.
So in your book and in the work that you do, you talk a lot about students in distress, students dealing with a lot of challenges and mental health issues. What does that typically look like in schools today?
So it can look so many different ways, and that's the complicated part of the puzzle. It can be hard to recognize. Sometimes it takes the form of, what you might picture, which is like a girl crying in the hallway or having an anxiety attack and friends gathering around and trying to support her and help her. But it can also take the form of things like a kid, shoving another kid or flipping his desk over.
As an educator, how do they sort of pick up on some of those subtle hints and clues of children that might be in distress if they're not the kid flipping over the desk?
The relationship is absolutely key. The reason kids trust their teachers or confide in them, either at their own initiative or when a teacher asks, is because they've had, a long-standing or sometimes not even long-standing relationship with that teacher. So I think establishing a classroom where there's mutual trust, respect, where you show that you're a good listener, that you just make yourself accessible and relatable, that kids will often go to teachers. If they don't, and I think those are the situations you're thinking of, just pay attention. What happens with teachers is they get to know the kids. If a kid seems different from how they usually are. If a kid seems different from many other kids their age or in their class. And when kids look different from their usual self or different from their peers, you can reach out, even just asking, how are you doing? How are things going? It shows that you're interested, and it gives kids an opportunity to open up if they feel so inclined.
Mm-hmm. You also talk a lot about teachers and parents understanding the whole student and what it means to support growth and development in the areas of mental health around the whole student. So talk a little bit more about what you mean when you say the whole student.
When I say the whole student for parents, what I'm talking about is kind of knowing the child that you have, understanding who that child is separate from you. And that they're not just a machine that's cranking out papers and taking tests, right? A lot of parents are understandably anxious about their children's achievement levels and future prospects, which are related to those. Mm-hmm. And so they can get very focused on achievement and lose sight of the wellness factor, the balance factor, the mental health factor. For teachers, when I talk about the whole student, it's all of that. It's also about recognizing students' identities. So if a student has a different identity from you, whether that's racial, gender, sexual orientation, social class, all of these sort of systemic variables that affect a kid's identity, their place within the school community, just to be sensitive and tuned into that. It doesn't mean you have to speak to it necessarily in a direct way, but just that you're aware of differences and of how those identities play out for the kid.
There's real life scenarios and situations in the book that you're addressing. And it kind of gives them a script, a guide, like you said, a tool to follow, because sometimes as adults, we aren't equipped to know the right things to say in a situation. So I think that piece is going to be extremely helpful for folks in that situation where they can look through and say, oh gosh, I have a situation very similar to the one in this book. And now this gives me a little bit of a nudge in how to approach it, what to say, and how to respond to this child. And if they don't know, then giving them the help that they do need and putting them in the hands of the right person.
Watch the Classroom Matters podcast and learn how the role of teachers has changed in recent years and what needs to be done to support them. Find the full interview at educate.today or wherever you get your podcasts.
It's the podcast for parents, teachers, and anyone interested in the education system. Classroom Matters. Hosted by Educate.today's Christy Houle. Find Classroom Matters on Educate.today or wherever you get your podcasts. First person, real world, expert driven. That's the focus of the videos, lesson plans, and activity ideas you'll find at our educational website, Educate.today.
As a clinical psychologist, Dr. Annie Garner has spent years working with children who have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD.
Children with ADHD become adolescents with ADHD who become drivers with ADHD.
Inattentive driving is a huge concern.
Inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity affect drivers. Teens with ADHD are twice as likely as teens without ADHD to be involved in a motor vehicle crash.
So Dr. Garner became a co-investigator of a new study to help teenage drivers with ADHD.
So we recruited 152 teens with ADHD who were between the ages of 16 and 19. In our previous work, we had found that one of the primary causes of driving issues in teens with ADHD was how frequently they looked away from the road.
Garner is an associate professor at St. Louis University in the Department of Psychology.
What we call an extended eye glance in the driving literature is look away for more than 2 seconds. Anything more than 2 seconds increases your crash risk significantly. We wanted to develop an intervention that would teach teens with ADHD to be more aware of those, we call them extended eye glances, and then train them to reduce the frequency of those extended eye glances.
This is how, using technology she helped develop, called Focal Plus.
Put them in a driving simulator where they also drove and they engaged in a secondary task using a sort of center console that we created, and they would look down at it. And when they would look away, we had them wearing eyeglasses that helped tell us how long they had been looking away from the road. And then those eye glances would send them a beep. It would be a loud beep, annoying beep, that would say, you're looking away from the road too long. And then it would go away once they looked back at the forward road. And they would do 5 sessions of this training once a week. Then we had them come back and we did some testing with them to see whether that training had helped them, minimize those extended eye glances.
The research team tracked progress over time as the teens advanced from the trainers to the open roads.
So the second outcome we looked at, we knew it would be great if we could make a difference in the simulator, but we were really interested in how it changed their driving on the actual road. So we installed cameras into the teens' cars, and we followed their driving behaviors for a year. And we were able to, from those videos, look at extended eye glances in their driving, during the driving, as well as crashes and near crashes over the course of the year. So what we found in the study was that at 1 month and 6 months, we saw statistically significantly fewer extended eye glances in the driving simulator. And we also saw that they had better control of their driving simulator car. In the real world, we also found fewer extended eye glances, 23% fewer extended eye glances, and they had a 40% reduced risk of crashes and near crashes on the real world compared to teens who had been in our control intervention. The control intervention was a computerized, just learning the rules of the road.
Having success, the goal now is to find ways to make the technology and training available to more teenage drivers with ADHD.
We're looking for ways to make it more accessible to folks. One area that we're looking at is VR, using virtual reality as a way to give teens this experience without all of the other equipment that goes into Focal Plus right now, because that would be more cost effective, most likely. But we're looking into that. We're exploring other options.
Scan the QR code on your screen to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
I'm Reinhard Herzog, and I'm a glassblower. I grew up in a little town in Germany, and when I was 14, school was done. I needed to work. The only choice I had was a big glass factory, and I could learn the profession of a laboratory glassblower. I had to work very exactly, and later when I decided to work creative, or as an artist, that helped me to do with the glass what I want to do. I heat up the glass tube in the flame of my torch, and then I blow it up for shaping. But if I want to give that clear glass any design, for those I have different colored glass pieces. This I melt in that clear glass, and then I blow it up for shaping. I make ornaments, glass balls or orbs. 25 years ago, I got chosen by Disney to blow glass there for a show, and also to deliver all year round my products as their orders. Ornaments, then snowmen and simple things. And then I decided to make Mickey heads. I made a ball in 2 years and it's a Mickey head, and they were very excited. Once I decided to make something, it was like a dream. I wanted to melt something inside an orb. And I prepared the inside piece, then the ball around, and then I blew it up, and that was very good. I called it my neurons because my wife said, Big Bang, it's like a Big Bang, and I call it my Big Bang ornament. I make the little ocean creatures like jellyfish and fish, and I make a seahorse. People say, oh, that's cute, and it looks really good. And I'm successful too. Makes me proud.
See Reinhardt's work at the 36th Annual Laumeier Art Fair, Mother's Day weekend, May 12th through the 14th.
HEC Media. Recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. HEC Media has been bringing home the hardware for over a decade. Arts and education to author talks, magazine shows and documentaries, individual craft achievements to overall excellence. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
St. Louis was founded, the Euro foundations of it. 70 people traveled north up the Mississippi in canoes to establish St. Louis. And here we are, reintroducing people to the city, the village, the place, by the exact method they came to it. So it's kind of a cool thing.
St. Louis already has an outdoor recreation economy. It's just kind of hidden. Independent of just paddling, we have unbelievable outdoor recreation assets in this area that we don't talk about enough, between rivers, caves, camping, the Katy Trail, national forests, the best state park system in the country.
And so what I'm really proud of is how this team element to this guiding operation is. And then, it's expanded out now. It's a bigger team now. We have the guide shop and boathouse.
When we were offered the opportunity to be at the boathouse, there was nowhere else within the city limits that paddling was accessible. Beyond just paddle boats, we wanted to explore trying out stand-up paddleboards and canoes and kayaks.
We felt like it made sense to have the shop be in the city because we're trying to bring together a community of people that are choosing to live in the inner ring of St. Louis, but know that you can get out and do really fun stuff in St. Louis and out of St. Louis.
The canoe's a wonderful vessel to ride big rivers, any river for that matter, any waterway.
After many, many trips out with Mike, going on the Missouri, going on the Mississippi, I just thought that there was an amazing amount of potential to get other people out, go out and convince people that they want to do this, that it's safe and gorgeous and something that every St. Louisan should have on their bucket list.
Took a little bit of a leap of faith. It was with Rue. He had just hired me and he's like, yeah, we're gonna go out now. And it was just in his 2-person canoe, and my heartbeat went up, my blood pressure went up, and I was a little nervous. And then Rue was very good at calming me down and said, no, we're gonna be fine. And yeah, we got out there and I quickly realized how massive the river was. I also quickly realized how peaceful and slow moving it was.
Having St. Louis start to see the river, not as this force of danger and filth, is really important.
When Mike started, it was just like a matter of convincing people to get on the river and that, it would be safe enough. In 2016, we'd do like a handful of trips a summer, and, and now we are doing trips every day.
The river creates emotions before you even get on it. That's probably the greatest joy, is to watch people overcome fear, overcome all these things, to come to a point where they're overwhelmed by, how awesome large scale and all that is. That's truly the joy of it.
Let's not waste time, take this slow. We've got miles behind us, but miles to go.
It's great to get kids out and youth out that are more tied to technology and screens than ever before, to get them completely disconnected and enjoy something that is all-inspiring and mind-blowing.
Even if you've been out a million times, there's always new things that you're learning or troubleshooting or, adapting to or managing. And so it's like, it brings this sense of adventure that's, you don't often get in your day-to-day life.
Let's not waste time, take this slow. We've got miles behind us, but miles to go.
One of the core things about Big Muddy Adventures is, we're an urban adventure company. So when you're out on the river, you get a pretty neat combination of kind of a wilderness experience and a very urban experience when you come into the arch especially.
We want to instill pride in our region. We want to instill pride in our natural assets. I want people just to have fun in St. Louis, and this is one way to do it that's quote-unquote unconventional. There's a lot of cool things to do in St. Louis, and this should be on everybody's bucket list.
Next week, women from all walks of life breaking stereotypes. Plus, ultimate frisbee at WashU, why this is more than just a game. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.